The golden evening light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors of the penthouse. Evelyn Mercer stood perfectly still, the divorce papers clutched in her trembling hand, her eyes fixed on the framed photograph she'd discovered hidden in the back of her husband's desk drawer. The woman in the photo was young and stunning, her carefree smile revealing perfect teeth, her arm casually draped around Richard's shoulder. As they stood on what was unmistakably the balcony of this very penthouse, the home Evelyn had poured her heart and soul into designing over the last 2 years, a text message illuminated her phone screen. It was from Tessa, her real estate attorney. Confirmation received. Property transfer complete as of 4:30 p.m. today. The penthouse is no longer in your name or Richard's. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. The papers slipped from Evelyn's fingers, scattering across the Italian marble she'd selected from a quarry in Carrara. She felt her knees give way as she sank to the floor, her mind racing to process what was happening. Richard hadn't just been unfaithful, he'd stolen their home from under her, gifting the $8.2 million penthouse she'd lovingly created to his 27-year-old mistress. Mrs. Mercer? She hadn't heard the elevator doors open. Their doorman, Marcus, stood hesitantly at the entrance to the living room, concern etched across his face. Security called up. There's a Ms. Vivian Cole here with paperwork? She says she's the new owner? Evelyn's gaze drifted to the city skyline beyond the windows, the view she'd fought so hard for when they'd purchased the property. In that moment, something inside her hardened into resolve. Tell Ms. Cole I'll be down in 5 minutes, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the storm raging within. And Marcus, could you please bring me the building's financial disclosure documents from the management office? I think I need to make an investment. 6 months earlier. It's perfect, Evelyn whispered, her breath fogging the glass as she pressed her palm against the window. Richard came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. At 46, he still had the athletic build that had first caught her eye 15 years ago, though silver now threaded through his dark hair. His law firm, Mercer and Associates, had just won a landmark case that had dominated headlines for weeks. 8.2 is steep. Even for Manhattan, he murmured against her ear. Evelyn turned in his arms, her eyes shining. The foundation just transferred my inheritance. 12 million, Richard. We can afford this place and still have plenty for the renovation. She gestured to the sprawling empty space around them. Imagine what we could create here. Richard kissed her forehead. You deserve this, Ev. After everything you've been through with the foundation, the inheritance battles, it's time you had something beautiful that's just yours. Evelyn leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. The years following her father's death had been a nightmare of litigation, as distant relatives challenged his will. The Whitmore Foundation, her father's legacy, had been her responsibility to protect, and the stress had taken its toll. Months of sleepless nights, the miscarriage, the depression that followed. Through it all, Richard had been her rock. I'm thinking we'll open up the space entirely, she said, moving away from him to walk the perimeter. Glass and light everywhere. We'll use sustainable materials, of course. Maybe commission some artwork from emerging artists for the walls. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it with a frown. The office? Evelyn asked, used to the interruptions. New client, he replied, typing rapidly. Big fish. International real estate developer. At this hour? They're based in Dubai. Time difference. He slipped the phone into his pocket. I need to head back to the office. Don't wait up. That was the first night. The first of many when Richard returned home smelling of an unfamiliar perfume, his excuses growing thinner as the months passed, and the renovation of their penthouse progressed. You're working too hard, Diana said, sliding a martini across the bar top toward Evelyn. Diana Powell had been Evelyn's best friend since college. Now, as the executive director of a women's shelter that the Whitmore Foundation supported, she was one of the few people who understood both sides of Evelyn's life, the privileged heiress and the hardworking foundation director. The penthouse is almost finished, Evelyn replied, taking a grateful sip. Just a few more weeks. And Richard? Is he excited about the move? Evelyn's smile faltered. He's distant. The Dubai account is demanding. Diana's expression grew serious. Ev, when was the last time you two had dinner together? Or took a weekend off? James and I barely saw each other during his venture capital phase, and we almost didn't make it. It's temporary, Evelyn insisted, though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Once we're settled in the new place, things will calm down. Diana reached across the bar and squeezed her hand. Just keep your eyes open, okay? And remember you have options. Your inheritance is yours. The foundation is yours. The person you've become despite that jackass father of yours? That's all you, Evelyn nodded. But her thoughts drifted to the marriage counseling brochure she'd found in Richard's briefcase last week, the one he'd dismissed as research for a client when she'd asked about it. She hadn't told Diana about that, or about the lipstick smudge on his collar, or about the late-night calls he took in the bathroom with the shower running to drown out his voice. Some truths were too painful to speak aloud, even to your closest friends. The renovation transformed the penthouse into a showcase of modern luxury. Evelyn had overseen every detail, from the rare Calicut marble countertops to the custom Italian lighting fixtures. The space was featured in Architectural Digest, with Evelyn credited as the visionary behind the design. On the night of their housewarming party, the who's who of Manhattan's elite gathered to celebrate. Evelyn floated through the crowd in a midnight blue gown, accepting compliments on her creation while scanning the room for Richard. She found him on the terrace, deep in conversation with a woman she didn't recognize, tall and lithe with chestnut hair cascading down her back. The woman leaned in close to hear what Richard was saying over the sounds of the party. "There you are," Evelyn said, sliding her arm through Richard's. "I don't believe we've met," she added, extending her hand to the stranger. "Vivian Cole," the woman replied, her handshake firm. "I'm with Artemis Development. Your husband has been instrumental in our recent acquisitions." "Ah, the Dubai client," Evelyn said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Richard has mentioned you." "All good things, I hope." Vivian's laugh was musical. "Your home is stunning. I've never seen such thoughtful use of space." Vivian's company is purchasing several buildings in the financial district, Richard explained. "Including this one, potentially." Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "This building? You never mentioned that." "Early discussions," Richard said smoothly. "Nothing concrete." "Still, it would be quite the coup," Vivian added. "The Whitmore is the crown jewel of the neighborhood." The building had been named after Evelyn's family, a coincidence that had seemed like fate when they'd found the penthouse. Now, the thought of this woman's company owning it made Evelyn's skin crawl. "If you'll excuse me," Evelyn murmured, "I should check on our other guests." She spent the rest of the evening playing hostess, but her mind kept returning to the image of Richard and Vivian on the terrace, their heads bent close together, sharing secrets that excluded her. The signs accumulated slowly, like dust gathering in a neglected corner. Richard's business dinners grew more frequent. The Dubai project expanded, requiring weekend work and overnight trips. The penthouse, once Evelyn's pride and joy, began to feel like a beautiful, empty stage set, a place where she performed the role of successful wife without any genuine connection to her co-star. On a Tuesday afternoon in March, Evelyn received a call from Marcus, the building's doorman. "Mrs. Mercer, there's a delivery for your husband. The courier insists it needs his signature, but I know Mr. Mercer is traveling." "I can sign for it," Evelyn offered. "It's marked personal and confidential. Building policy, I'm his wife, Marcus. I'll take responsibility." 20 minutes later, Evelyn sat at Richard's desk in the home office, turning the small velvet box over in her hands. Inside was a delicate diamond bracelet with a card that read simply, "For V, until I can give you everything." Evelyn's hands didn't shake as she returned the bracelet to its box. They didn't shake as she powered on Richard's personal laptop, the one he never left at the office. They didn't shake as she guessed the password on her third try, Viv Cole 27. The evidence was meticulously organized in folders labeled by date. Emails, photographs, voice recordings, hotel receipts. And most damning of all, property documents showing the gradual transfer of ownership of their penthouse, her penthouse, from their joint names solely to Richard's over the past 3 months. The final document was dated for the coming Friday, a transfer of deed from Richard Mercer to Vivian Cole. Evelyn closed the laptop and sat in perfect stillness as night fell around her. When Richard called to say he was stuck in Dubai for another few days, she congratulated him on closing the deal and asked if he needed anything from home. "Just you," he said, his voice warm with practiced affection. "I miss you, Ev." "I miss you too," she replied, and it wasn't entirely a lie. She missed the man she'd thought she married, not this stranger who was stealing her home and her dignity in one calculated move. After hanging up, Evelyn made 3 calls, one to Diana, one to her banker, and one to a real estate attorney named Tessa Blackwood, who had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. The game Richard was playing had rules he'd created, but Evelyn was about to introduce a new rule book entirely. Richard returned from Dubai on Thursday, a day earlier than expected, and with a noticeable sunburn for someone supposedly attending indoor business meetings in March. Evelyn greeted him with a home-cooked meal and his favorite bourbon. "You're in a good mood," he observed, loosening his tie. "I've been thinking about us," Evelyn replied, refilling his glass. "About how distant we've been." Guilt flickered across his features. "Work has been intense, I know. The Dubai project, Artemis development." She maintained her smile with practiced ease. "Vivian Cole must be quite the client." Richard's hand froze halfway to his glass. "She's demanding, but the account is worth it." Evelyn took a sip of her wine. "I was thinking we should plan a trip. Just the 2 of us. Maybe in May after the Whitmore Foundation Gala?" Relief washed over his face. "That sounds perfect. Anywhere you want to go. Anywhere but here," Evelyn thought as she watched him drink deeply from his glass, unaware that tomorrow she would be homeless while his mistress moved into the home she'd created. Morning found Richard in a rush, claiming an early meeting at the office. Evelyn kissed him goodbye at the elevator, her performance flawless. The moment the doors closed, she turned to her laptop where the tracking app showed his location in real time, not heading downtown toward his office, but uptown to Vivian's current apartment. Evelyn spent the day methodically executing the plan she'd developed with Tessa over the past 48 hours. By noon, she'd transferred the remaining balance of her inheritance, just over $5 million, into a newly established holding company. By 2, she'd arranged a meeting with the building's management company. By 4, she'd discovered that Richard had forged her signature on the documents removing her name from the penthouse deed. And then came the text from Tessa confirming what she'd already known. As of 4:30 p.m., the penthouse legally belonged to Vivian Cole, which brought Evelyn to this moment, standing in the marble entry hall of what had been her home just hours ago, waiting for Marcus to bring Vivian up in the private elevator. The doors opened silently, revealing Vivian in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants, her expression transitioning from triumph to confusion at the sight of Evelyn. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, recovering quickly. "I didn't expect to find you here." "It's Ms. Whitmore, actually," Evelyn corrected her. "I never changed my name legally, just socially." She gestured to the living room. "Please come in. This is your home now, after all." Vivian stepped cautiously into the space, her eyes darting around as if searching for a trap. "Richard said you'd be gone by now. Did he?" Evelyn moved to the bar cart and poured 2 glasses of champagne. "I'm sure he's told you many things about me, most of them probably untrue. He said you'd agreed to the divorce, that you were more committed to your foundation than your marriage." Vivian remained standing, refusing the offered glass. Evelyn set both glasses down with a soft clink. "Interesting. He told me he was in Dubai all week. Yet here you both are, conspiring to steal my home through forged documents and fraudulent transfers." Vivian's composure faltered. "Forged? I don't know what you're talking about. Richard assured me everything was above board." Of course he did. Evelyn's smile was razor-sharp. The same way he assured you that Artemis Development would be acquiring this building. Another lie, by the way. I checked. The elevator chimed again, and this time it was Richard who emerged, his confident stride faltering at the tableau before him, his wife and his mistress facing off in the penthouse he'd promised to the latter. "Evelyn," he began, his tone conciliatory. "I was going to tell you tonight. I've drawn up a generous settlement." "Generous?" Evelyn's laugh was brittle. "You forged my signature to transfer my inheritance-purchased property to your girlfriend, and you call that generous?" "That's not what happened," Richard insisted, moving to stand beside Vivian. "The penthouse was purchased with joint funds. My funds," Evelyn corrected him. "From my inheritance, which you systematically drained from our accounts over the past year." Vivian looked between them, uncertainty creeping into her expression. "Richard, you said she knew about us, that this was all part of an amicable separation." "He's an excellent liar," Evelyn said, her voice softening with genuine sympathy for the younger woman. "I believed him for 15 years. Richard's face hardened. "Whatever you think you know, it doesn't matter now. The deed is done, literally. The penthouse belongs to Vivian." "Yes, it does," Evelyn agreed, surprising them both. "And I have no intention of contesting that." "You don't?" Richard's suspicion was palpable. "No." Evelyn moved to the window, gazing out at the cityscape she loved. "But I thought you both should know who your new landlord is before you celebrate too much." "Landlord?" Vivian echoed. "As of 3 o'clock today, Whitmore Holdings, my holding company, acquired a controlling interest in the Whitmore Buildings Management Corporation." Evelyn turned back to face them, her expression serene. "I own the building now." The color drained from Richard's face. "That's impossible. The building wasn't for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price, Richard. You taught me that." Evelyn picked up her purse from the entryway table. "You have the penthouse, Vivian. Congratulations. But I control the building, the management, the board, and the bylaws. Effective immediately, the maintenance fees for the penthouse are increasing. Significantly." "You can't do that," Richard sputtered. "I can, and I have. Special assessment for the penthouse unit only, $20,000. Monthly, plus the regular maintenance of $12,000. Evelyn checked her watch. "First payment due tomorrow." "Late fees are substantial." Vivian sank into a chair, her face ashen. "That's nearly $400,000 a year just in fees." "Welcome to luxury Manhattan real estate," Evelyn said with a shrug. "It's expensive." She walked to the elevator and pressed the call button. "Oh, and the renovation you were planning for the master bathroom. The board will need to approve that." I wouldn't hold my breath. As the elevator doors opened, Evelyn paused, looking back at the stunned couple. "One more thing. The building has new subletting rules. No short-term rentals. No corporate leases. And owners must occupy their units for a minimum of 9 months per year." Her smile was glacial. "Enjoy your new home. I hear the walls are quite thin." 2 weeks later, Evelyn sat across from Richard and his attorney in Tessa Blackwood's sleek downtown office. The conference room offered a panoramic view of the city, but all eyes were fixed on the documents spread across the polished table. "This is extortion," Richard's lawyer, a pinch-faced man named Geller, declared. "It's business," Tessa countered, her tone bored. "Your client fraudulently transferred assets during marriage. We have evidence of the forgeries. Ms. Whitmore could press criminal charges, but she's generously offering an alternative." Richard hadn't spoken directly to Evelyn, instead whispering furiously to his attorney throughout the meeting. Now he looked up, his handsome features twisted with resentment. "You're going to bankrupt us," he said. "The maintenance fees alone are perfectly legal," Evelyn finished for him. "As the controlling interest holder of the building management, I have the authority to set fees as needed for improvements and operations." "What improvements?" "There's nothing wrong with the building. The foundation is being reinforced. The electrical system's updated. The lobby redesigned." Evelyn ticked off the items on her fingers. All necessary work that primarily benefits the penthouse. Richard slammed his fist on the table. This is about punishment. You're trying to force us out. Not at all, Evelyn replied calmly. You and Vivian are welcome to stay as long as you can afford it. Though I understand Artemis Development is facing some challenges. Something about investment funds being withdrawn unexpectedly? The blood drained from Richard's face. Several of his wealthiest clients were also major investors in Vivian's company. Clients who had received personal calls from Evelyn detailing Richard's ethical lapses in recent weeks. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice hollow. Evelyn slid a document across the table. A fair division of assets. You keep your law firm. I keep the foundation. You return the money you diverted from my inheritance, approximately $3 million. You agree to the divorce on grounds of adultery with no further claims against me. And the penthouse? Stays with Vivian, Evelyn said with a small smile. As your gift to her. Though I imagine the financial reality of keeping it will become apparent fairly quickly. Richard studied her face, searching for the woman he'd married, the one who'd cried for days after the miscarriage, who'd suffered panic attacks during the foundation litigation, who'd been so pathetically grateful for his support during her darkest days. That woman was gone. You planned this, he accused. You knew about Vivian before Dubai, before the penthouse transfer. Not at first, Evelyn admitted. But I suspected something when you started working late so often. The lipstick on your collar wasn't my shade. Amateur mistake, Richard. Geller cleared his throat. If we agree to these terms, the maintenance fees will remain as they are, Evelyn said firmly. This isn't a negotiation about the building. That's separate from our divorce settlement. Then what's the point? Richard demanded. If we're still trapped in a property we can't afford. The point, Evelyn interrupted, is that actions have consequences. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. She gathered her papers and stood. You have until Friday to decide. After that, I'll be instructing Tessa to proceed with criminal charges for the forgery. As she walked toward the door, Richard called after her, his voice cracking with a vulnerability she'd never heard from him before. I did love you, Evelyn. In the beginning? She paused, her hand on the doorknob, and looked back at him. I know, she said softly. That's what made the betrayal so effective. But I've learned my lesson now. Trust should be earned, not assumed. Her gaze hardened. Unfortunately for you, I'm a quick study. That evening, Evelyn met Diana at their favorite rooftop bar, where the spring air carried the promise of renewal. He signed, Evelyn announced, sliding into the booth. Full settlement, no contest. Diana raised her glass in salute. To freedom. And consequences, Evelyn added, clinking her glass against her friend's. What about the penthouse situation? Diana asked. Still planning to squeeze them out? Evelyn gazed out at the city lights, considering. They're already feeling the pressure. Vivian listed the penthouse this morning. After only 2 weeks? That was fast. The first maintenance bill came due. Plus, there's the slight issue of the water pressure in their unit. Evelyn's smile was mischievous. Apparently, it's either scalding hot or freezing cold. The building engineer can't seem to figure out why. Diana laughed. You're terrifying when you're vengeful, you know that? I'm not vengeful, Evelyn protested. I'm strategic. There's a difference. And what's your strategy now? Buy back the penthouse at a discount when they can't afford to keep it? Evelyn shook her head. I don't want it anymore. Too many bad memories. She took a sip of her drink, savoring the moment before she revealed her news. I've bought a brownstone in the West Village. I'm converting it into a transitional housing center for your shelter program. The foundation will fund it in perpetuity. Diana's eyes widened. Ev, that's... I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me design it. I'm thinking light open spaces, sustainable materials, a garden on the roof. Evelyn's expression softened with genuine enthusiasm. We'll create something beautiful and purposeful, something that can't be stolen or corrupted. What about you? Where will you live? Evelyn hesitated, then reached into her bag and withdrew a set of keys. I bought the apartment directly below the penthouse. I move in next month. Diana stared at her in disbelief. You're staying in the building? Why would you torture yourself like that? It's not torture, Evelyn insisted. It's a reminder of what I survived, of what I built. She twirled the keychain around her finger. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on the place now that I own it. And it has nothing to do with watching Richard and Vivian squirm? That's just a bonus. Evelyn's laugh was genuine, perhaps her first real laugh in months, though I doubt they'll be there much longer. The market for $8 million penthouses with unpredictable plumbing and astronomical fees is surprisingly small. As if on cue, her phone chimed with an email notification, an offer on the penthouse from a foreign buyer, significantly below asking price. And so it begins, Evelyn murmured, showing Diana the screen. Are you going to approve the sale as the building manager? Evelyn considered the question. Eventually, after a thorough review process. Very thorough. Might take months, Diana shook her head in admiration. Remind me never to cross you. You wouldn't, Evelyn said with certainty. That's why you're my best friend. She raised her glass again. To new beginnings. And to owning your power. And occasionally, your ex-husband's building. 1 year later. Evelyn stood on the terrace of her apartment, watching the sunset paint the city in hues of amber and gold. Below her, moving trucks lined the street as the penthouse changed hands for the third time in 12 months. The first buyers, a Russian oligarch and his young wife, had lasted 4 months before the steady stream of necessary inspections, maintenance issues, and building emergencies had driven them to sell at a loss. The second owner, a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, had barely moved in before discovering that his application to renovate the primary bathroom had been permanently under review by the building board. Now, as autumn leaves skittered across the terrace, Evelyn observed the new owner's possessions being carefully transported into the private elevator. According to Marcus, now the building manager after Evelyn had promoted him, the buyer was a reclusive author who valued privacy above all else. Evelyn sipped her tea, reflecting on the changes of the past year. Richard had moved to Chicago after his firm lost several major clients and merged with a larger practice. Vivian's company had folded following the withdrawal of key investors, though rumors suggested she'd landed on her feet with a position at a smaller development firm in Boston. Neither had contacted Evelyn since the divorce was finalized. The Brownstone Transitional Housing Center was thriving under Diana's direction, offering shelter and support to women rebuilding their lives after domestic violence. Evelyn had thrown herself into the Whitmore Foundation's work, expanding its focus to include legal aid for those who couldn't afford to fight their own battles in court. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. New owner requesting meeting with building owner. Says it's important. Dinner tonight? Evelyn frowned. She'd maintained her anonymity as the building's owner, working through a management company for most interactions. Meeting this new resident would break that careful separation, but curiosity tugged at her. Tell them 8 p.m. The rooftop garden. The rooftop garden had been Evelyn's first improvement to the building. A lush, sustainable oasis 17 stories above Manhattan. As she stepped out of the private elevator, the city stretched before her in a tapestry of lights against the night sky. A figure stood at the far end of the garden, silhouetted against the illuminated skyline. A woman, tall and elegant in a simple black dress, her back to Evelyn. I understand you wanted to meet the building owner, Evelyn called out as she approached. The woman turned, and Evelyn stopped short, recognition freezing her in place. Hello? Evelyn, said Vivian Cole. Evelyn's shock quickly hardened into wariness. What are you doing here? I bought the penthouse. Vivian's smile held none of the triumph it once had. Ironic, isn't it? How? Evelyn demanded. After Artemis collapsed, I wrote a book, Vivian interrupted, about corporate fraud and gender discrimination in real estate development. She gestured vaguely. It did well. Very well. Evelyn crossed her arms. And you chose to buy the penthouse? Why, to twist the knife? To return something that was stolen from you. Vivian reached into her clutch and withdrew a folded document, holding it out. The deed. I'm transferring the penthouse back to you. Evelyn made no move to take it. I don't understand. Vivian sighed, moving to sit on one of the garden benches. After a moment's hesitation, Evelyn joined her, maintaining a careful distance. Richard lied to me from the beginning, Vivian said, her voice low. He told me you were separating, that the penthouse was his to give. When I discovered the truth, that he'd forged documents, stolen your inheritance, I ended it immediately. That didn't stop you from keeping the property, Evelyn pointed out. I was angry. And hurt. And too proud to admit I'd been used. Vivian's gaze dropped to her hands. But the penthouse never felt right. It was built with your vision, your passion. Living there was like inhabiting someone else's dream. So why come back now? Why not just sell it like the others? Because I owe you an apology. And because... Vivian hesitated, then continued with determined honesty. Because I admired what you did. How you fought back. The housing center you created. The way you transformed your pain into purpose. I wanted to learn from that example. Evelyn studied the younger woman's face, searching for deception and finding only vulnerability. The maintenance fees, Vivian said with a small smile. And the plumbing issues. Very effective. Despite herself, Evelyn felt a laugh bubble up. The plumbing was actually legitimate. Old buildings have quirks. And the 3-month review process for changing a light fixture? That might have been overkill, Evelyn admitted. A comfortable silence fell between them, surprising in its ease. I won't insult you by asking for forgiveness, Vivian finally said. But I am offering restitution. She placed the deed on the bench between them. No strings attached. The penthouse is yours again if you want it. Evelyn touched the document with tentative fingers. And if I don't want it, then sell it. Donate the proceeds. Burn it to the ground, Vivian shrugged. It's yours to decide. Evelyn picked up the deed, the weight of it familiar in her hands. Why did you really buy it? Vivian met her gaze directly. To close a chapter? For both of us. She stood, smoothing her dress. My flight to London leaves tomorrow morning. I've accepted a position with a women-led development firm there. The penthouse is empty except for a bottle of champagne in the refrigerator. Consider it a housewarming gift. Or a parting one. As Vivian walked toward the elevator, Evelyn called after her. What was the book about, really? Vivian paused, looking back over her shoulder. It's called Glass Houses, about the invisible barriers women face, and how sometimes the only way forward is to break everything and rebuild. Her smile was genuine. Your foundation received 20% of the proceeds, anonymously. The elevator doors opened and Vivian stepped inside. The penthouse always suited you better than it did me, she said as the doors began to close. It was built with integrity, like its creator. Alone in the rooftop garden, Evelyn sat for a long time, the deed in her lap, the city breathing around her. Eventually, she took out her phone and texted Diana. Remember when you asked what I planned to do with the penthouse eventually? I think I just figured it out. 6 months later. Are you sure about this? Diana asked as they stood in the transformed penthouse, now divided into 3 elegant office suites. You could get twice the market rate leasing it commercially. Evelyn moved through the space, adjusting a framed photograph on the wall, the first graduating class of the Whitmore Women in Real Estate program. 20 young faces beaming with pride and possibility. The foundation can afford it, she replied. And these women deserve a proper start. The mentorship program needs a headquarters, and what better place than the building I own? The sound of voices and laughter filtered in from the main suite, where the program's first cohort of participants was gathering for orientation. Young women from diverse backgrounds, all passionate about breaking into the male-dominated world of real estate development and investment. Besides, Evelyn added with a smile, I get to keep my apartment downstairs. Best of both worlds. Diana linked her arm through Evelyn's as they walked toward the main room. From betrayed wife to building owner to real estate education mogul. Quite the journey. It's not about the revenge anymore, Evelyn said thoughtfully, though that part was admittedly satisfying. It's about creating something meaningful from what was taken. She paused at the threshold, watching the room full of animated young professionals networking with established women in the industry. Some of the same women who had once attended her housewarming party as Richard's colleagues' wives. Now leaders in their own right. Richard called last week, Evelyn said quietly. He's engaged again. Wanted to clear the air before the wedding. Diana raised an eyebrow. And I wished him well, genuinely. Evelyn's smile held no bitterness. He asked if I'm seeing anyone. Are you? You've been mysterious about those dinner meetings lately. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, her expression softening. Speaking of which, I should go. I'm meeting someone at the brownstone. The architect working on the expansion has some new ideas. Diana gave her a knowing look. The very attractive architect who keeps finding reasons to consult with you personally? He appreciates good design, Evelyn replied with mock defensiveness. And he asked me to dinner again. I'm saying yes this time. As they walked to the elevator, Diana gestured to the building around them. Your father would have hated all of this, you know. Women owning buildings, running foundations, creating their own power base in his precious real estate world. I know, Evelyn said, her voice serene. That's the best part. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, where Marcus greeted them with a warm smile. Outside, the city hummed with potential as evening approached. Evelyn paused to look back at the building, her building, its windows glowing with purpose in the gathering dusk. The revenge had been sweet, certainly. But the rebuilding? That was sweeter still.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.